Hamjambo. This one is an African greeting, a Swahili greeting to be specific. So welcome to Politics in Kenya and Africa show. My name is Daniel Munjal, and today we are going to talk about Lumumba, how he found his personality and ideologies of Lumumba that can inform this future. So who is Lumumba and how did he found his personality? Lumumba was a nationalist, pan-Africanist, anti-imperialist, a revolutionarist, a reformer, and a martyr of all these ideals. He was killed because of all the ideas that I've just mentioned. He was assassinated 6 months after the independence of Congo, but his anti-imperialist stance and political principle made him to be a symbol of pan-African and African struggle throughout the world. He was born on 2nd July 1925, the same year as Malcolm X and Franz Fanon were born in Webonya village of Katokokombe, Sankuru district, Central Kasai province. And as a child, he attended both Protestant and Catholic schools, which were all run by white missionaries. So, and thus quickly became late enough to begin writing articles with pro-nationalist favor of Congolese press. He worked as a clerk in colonial tax office. He also worked as a assistant postmaster in a post office, and he was also a manager of brewery. As a member of educated elite, he began writing, agitating for Congolese anti-colonial movement, whereby I can mention two of his writing. For example, we have La Croix du Congo, that is a French language, and La Voix du Congolais. So, and there is also a book that he wrote, Congo My Country. So that is just a basic or a brief of how Lumumba found his personality, though there are much that can be told about him, how his relation with MNC and how he was the president of MNC, transformed it from a movement to a political party, and how through his efforts other anti-colonial government joined MNC. So that is just some basic. So let's go to the main event about the ideologies. The ideologies, there are the three ideologies, so will all be here. The political, social, and economic ideologies will all be here. So we contend with the people of the same mind as I am, that for Lumumba to be judged either as a good or a bad leader, his political ideology and political actions in the 67 days that he was a prime minister must be measured against the internal and external political and social environment of post-DRC Congo. That I mean post-DRC Congo now, because we have just realized that there are some people who are declaring that they will never acknowledge him to be a good leader. This environment combined created Lumumba to be a kind of leader that he was. And for example, let's say the struggle and development in DRC is a continuous struggle for neocolonialism, and the end of it will be a free Congo country that Lumumba envisioned. So let's give an example of how power has been exchanged and examine some of the political instability that has been happening. So Kasavubu took power over Lumumba, and he was one of the leaders who delivered a speech in 1963 in Addis Ababa when there was formation of OAU. And the power exchange between Kasavubu and Mobutu was a kind of coup d'etat, in that Mobutu had a coup d'etat to take power over Kasavubu. And for exchange of power between Kasavubu and Laurent Kabila, there was an overthrow, because Mobutu was seen as King Leopold II, who took Congo as his personal property, and he was overthrown by Laurent Kabila with the help of the allies of the French countries within Congo. And by that, Laurent was assassinated, and his son took over power. And when his son took over power, I'm told that he had a mindset of changing the constitution so that he remained in power. So you can imagine the kind of political instability that has been happening, and all this kind of instability is rooted from the good leadership that was interfered with the Moise Tushombe, Mobutu by that time, because all that was just a repercussion of when a good plan is interfered with. Lumumba struggled for social justice, economic independence, and political self-determination. Social justice, I can merge it with whereby he advocated for against exploitation of man by man. When you come to political self-determination, we can see it this way, like that Congo should be a free country, an independent country being ruled itself politically by the leaders, determining the policies of Congo. Economic independence is also about Congo taking part and dominating economical issues. For example, the mining of gold, the mining of minerals that is in Congo. Congo should take part, and not the foreigners who were taking the larger part, and they were afraid to give all their profit to their profit was being threatened by Lumumba. So coupled with all this, Lumumba was disliked the political system that was structured along the tribal lines. And I said something on my previous video on desocialization in Kenyan politics, something that I borrowed. Let me extend a bit. Something that I borrowed from Mwalimu. Mwalimu Julius Nyerere said that he does not believe that tribe should be the basis of mobilization in Africa, and we are the sons and the daughters of the same mother country, and perhaps that should be a building block of unity. So by this also, Lumumba was against the political system that was structured along the tribal lines, just like unlike Joseph Kasavubu of Abako. It was Abako party, I think, of Abako. So all this made Lumumba to be an outstanding leader, just like Kwame Nkrumah, Mwalimu himself, just to mention a few. Franz Fanon, just to mention, Fanon was an intellectual, Franz Fanon. Then we have Muhammad Gaddafi. So all this made Lumumba to be an outstanding leader, and when he finally took power, he proclaimed that his regime was one of positive neutralism. That one is the fourth ideology. Positive neutralism, return back to African values and rejection of any kind of imported ideology. Despite as much as he had good relation with the Soviet Union, now Russia, he was not in a position to let me say, on my own thinking, okay, he was not in a position to import communism. And although the West interpreted this is why, because they had a hand in his assassination, in his death. So all these ideologies are reflected in his inaugural speech in 30th June 1960, where as a prime minister, whereby he reinforced and retaliated with the vision of self-dignity and self-confidence, in that in the midst of colonial independence ceremony, whereby the Belgians were busy celebrating how they had civilized the Congolese, civilized the Congolese to a self-rule, Lumumba spelled it out with graphic terms, bringing the reality of colonialism, describing it as 80 years of humiliation and slavery, which was imposed to them by force. And you might think that Lumumba was born to deliver this speech. So I will say the speech, okay, and my own way, and I'm sure I will not offend the content of the speech said by Lumumba by that time. So Lumumba said it this way. Let me put it this way. He said, "We have known harassing exerted to us in exchange of salaries which do not permit us to eat enough, to drive away hunger, to clothe ourselves, to house ourselves decently, or to raise children as creatures dear to us. We have known ironies, insult, blows that endures morning, noon, and evening just because we are Negroes. We have seen We have seen our land being taken away in the name alleged to be legal laws. We will never forget the massacre where many perished, and the cells that those who refused to submit to the authority, to the regime, were jailed. So this speech actually speaks for itself of how Lumumba was planning, or rather to take the country toward direction. So he also adopted the Republican approach, and Republican approach wanted to democratize all the institutions and to separate the church from the state. According to him, amelioration, improvement, let me say improvement of people's Africans' living condition was the only meaning of independence, unlike his peers, the Joseph Kasavubu and Moise Tushombe, who were tribal lines and material interest. He may believe that anything that improves the living condition of Africa, that one is the meaning of independence. And he struggled for social, political, and economical emancipation, whereby, being driven by his political zeal and conviction, he really pressed vigorously, and he wanted to free Congo, to free Congolese. And all this can be reflected to the letter that he sent to his wife. And the letter also goes this way, because this shows how the character and the personality of Lumumba. Letter goes this way: no brutality, no agony, no torture has ever made me to beg for mercy. I would rather die with my head high, my faith unshaken, and a profound trust on the destiny of my country, than to live in subjection, seeing principles sacred to me laughed to scorn. History will be told, history not in Brussels, Paris, Washington, or UN, but history told in Africa, a free African from the puppet rulers, history about Africa. Africa will write her own history, and history will have its say. Lumumba, as a matter of democracy and development in Congo, and his desire to bring about freedom to Congo cost him his life. So, for example, 6 years down the line, after his demise, after realizing the importance of Lumumba's ideologies in economic and political independence, Congo, led by Mobutu, declared him to be a national hero. In a national broadcast speech during the ceremony where Lumumba was canonized as a national hero, Mobutu gave a speech acknowledging Lumumba, saying how he was a hero, and the speech goes like this: glory and honor to the illustrious Congolese, that great Africa, the first matter of our economic independence. How can we fail to recall that great figure, Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba? For great he was, and great he will remain. It will be hard to forget that important passage in his historic speech of 30th June 1960. That profession of faith, that mysteriously expositing of what the Congo must do to achieve economic independence. What the Congo must do to achieve economic independence. So you can see how the ideologies of Lumumba were. The first I said, economic independence, social justice, and political self-determination. I also mentioned Republican approach and positive neutralism. So those were the basic that we could gather in this presentation. Though in this presentation there is a lot that the demise of Lumumba is rooted from many things. They are both internal and external, because the kind of a leader that he was, a straightforward leader that had a good picture of a good picture of Congo, not like his peers who were driven by the material and the tribal lines. He was driven with independence, anything that improved the living standards of Congolese. So that is kind of leader that Lumumba was. although his demise can be a topic of its own, so when there was time, we shall see if we could make one about the demise of Lumumba. Thank you.